Welcome to News for the Soul's 20th anniversary broadcast series. News for the Soul, the longest running spiritual empowerment and exploration broadcast in North America, started its 21st year in January 2018, and we're just getting warmed up. It's time to take it to the next level, exploring the edge of human consciousness and possibility on planet Earth in our 21st year with founder and journalist Nicole Marie Whitney at the helm. What's really real and what's really possible? That is what we want to know. So if you're ready to find out together, get ready for life-changing talk radio. From the uplifting to the unexplained, Platinum Edition, here is News for the Soul.
Hear all of our previously aired broadcasts of News for the Soul online at newsforthesoul.com. Now let's get back to the show.
And we are live still. It's time now for Almapura Awakenings with Niki. Let's bring her on to reintroduce herself and her show and let us know what's up for today. Niki, welcome back.
Hi, thanks for having me. Today's show is Almapura Awakenings. That's the show that I offer once a month through News for the Soul. And my mission here is to try and enlighten humanity to the connection with their soul, to teach them how to connect with their spirit self and to kind of get the guidances that they need from within, because everybody says all the answers are inside of us, and if they're inside of us, how do we get inside of us to kind of answer those questions? So I try to assist people in doing that. I offer a lot of services like mediumship and communicating with friends and relatives in heaven. And that's the purpose of the show, is to try to have you reach into the spirit world and become who you're meant to be here on Earth. So that's why we're here today. And I have a caller for today's show, which is my daughter, Brittany. I'm not sure if she's on the line, but when I was trying to think of a topic today to discuss, I was talking to my daughter about it, and she came up with, I thought, a really good idea. So if she's on the line, I'd love for her to introduce it.
Hello? There you are.
Hi, how's it going?
Well, I'm good. How are you, Britt?
I'm good. Thanks, Mom. Okay, so I'll introduce myself. My name is Brittany. I'm Niki's daughter. My life, I've always described to people, has been very interesting. As listeners of the show know, my mom had her spiritual awakening in 1998, but before then she was always very intuitive, and that intuition was always a part of my life since I was little. I always knew that my mom kind of knew stuff. I didn't know how, I didn't know why, but I knew she knew stuff. And that made me really careful as a child around her. So then when she had her spiritual awakening, she clued me into that, and it began this interesting intersection of our relationship where I started to compare pre-awakening mom to post-awakening mom. And throughout this journey that we've all been on together, people have always come up to me and said, like, oh, what's it like to have a mom who knows all of this stuff? Like, what's it like to be raised by a mom who's just so enlightened and so spiritual and all of this? And I'm here to say that it's not that different, except it is. So I thought it would be a very fun topic for us to discuss from both perspectives of the parent of someone who is spiritual and the parent who is spiritual, and what kind of effect does that have on our relationship?
Love it. As a conscious single mom of two and all kinds of journeys through that awakening process, this is one of my favorite topics. So the floor is yours, lady.
Wonderful.
Okay, so let me kind of explain a little bit my side of this as Brittany's mom. When I was on my own since I was fairly young, so when I had Brittany and I were like a team. We were just me and her. I was a single mom, and so I was young too. I was 19. So I kind of grew up with my daughter. She's 29, I'm 49. And so we kind of, you know, we liked the same music and we found a lot of common ground. One of the things that I noticed about Brittany is being a single mom, I was working 2 jobs. She was 3 at the time. And when Brittany was 3 and I was working 2 jobs, I was pretty overwhelmed trying to get us on track in our life. And I had a really bad day at work, like a terrible day at work. And I was a software engineer, and I was a new software engineer. So I didn't understand the culture of the company and everything like that. And I had to pick up Brittany from daycare. And so I went to go pick her up from daycare. And I was obviously really stressed out and overwhelmed, but I was quiet. You know, I got in the car with her, and I asked her, you know, how was your day, Britt? And she told me a little bit about her day, and she turned around, you know, 3 years old. They kind of start to have so many curiosities. And she was like, well, how was your day, Mama? And I think it was the moment and the fact that I just felt so alone and I was so overwhelmed with just life and being a single mom that I actually told her how my day was. I complained about my boss. I complained about the people that I was working with. I was telling her how I was the youngest one there and they were all older than me and they didn't probably like me. And so all of my insecurities and all of my fears just came rushing out of me into this 3-year-old little girl, into her experience. And as I was unloading on her, just kind of dropping this information on this beautiful little girl with these big brown eyes, I kept telling myself in the process of doing that, like, this isn't her problem. Like, she's not supposed to have this worry. She's not just supposed to know that Mom's day was so bad. That's not a good mom to do that. But I couldn't stop it because it was like this tidal wave of emotion and anxiety and all these things came out of me. And my daughter, at 3 years old, turned around and said, you know, Mommy, today it feels this way, but I know that tomorrow it'll feel better. Because remember, a few weeks ago I had a bad day and then the next day my day was good. Well, why don't you just not pay attention to your boss? I didn't pay attention to Adam. And so Brittany started to give me all of these very simple, very, very simple things that I could do that would change my perception of my day and change the way I acted in my evening. And it blew my mind. And I was sitting in the car that day and something became so clear to me, like, children have all of the answers. Like, how is it possible that my 23-year-old self unloaded on this 3-year-old child who had this capacity to bring it all clear into focus? How did she do that? How does she know those things? And at that moment, I understood that the one who actually knew more about life was my daughter. Because in my reflection and in my prayer, I realized she wasn't clouded. She didn't have any opinions. She didn't really learn about how the world is. She only had what she came with, and that's her soul. She couldn't support herself. She couldn't pick out her clothes. She couldn't get a job. She needed me, or so I thought. I thought she needed me until that day when I realized I needed her because she just fixed everything for me in a matter of 4 seconds just by what she was saying. So what it caused me to do, and I know that Brittany says that there's a post-spiritual mom and a pre-spiritual mom, but I'm going to have to correct you, honey, on this because the day that I became awake toward the closeness that children have with their own souls, the pureness from which they speak, the truth that they tell, the day I truly awoke to the humanity and what humanity does to our soul, what our caregivers, our teachers, our parents, how we keep that quiet, that she wasn't keeping that quiet. And that part of her that wasn't staying quiet, wow, it knew a hell of a lot more than her 23-year-old mom. So I started to listen to Brittany, and I became awake at that. So then that's how my awakening began, was with a very human, overwhelming experience with my daughter where she made me see something different. And that's an awakening, when you see something different, when somebody can change your perception. So the first person in my entire life as an adult that changed my perception and had the ability to do that was my 3-year-old daughter.
Well, that makes me feel super special, Mom.
Well, you are super special, honey, but go ahead. Now you can talk.
Thanks. Well, that's really cool, and I think that is that element of that humanity is something that is part of us, but also something that is only part of us, is something that has influenced our relationship and how you've taught me my whole life. And to speak more on that, like as I got older, what did you start to see of, like, because you said earlier that what you realized at that moment was that all I had, the only information that I had was what I came with, right? So I only came here with this very pure understanding of how the world worked. And then as I got older, as I started to acquire those things that got put on us, our humanity, our human understandings, our interpretations, our perspective, our state of being, as those things started to get put on me, as I started to collect those awarenesses, how did that change things for you as a mother, watching me grow up and beginning to acquire these new perspectives?
I'll tell you, in many different ways, it was a little bit torturous, and it was a little bit exhilarating, and it was a little bit of all of the emotions that you could wrap up into what a mom experiences or a parent experiences with their child. Because oftentimes parents arrive at their self-definition when they have a child. Oftentimes we become who we're going to become because of our children. And so that moment with you at 3 years old, what it identified to me is that you had a knowledge that I so wished that I could tap into. That how did I go through my day? And this entire experience was so overwhelming that you were able to break down in under 4 seconds. I was seeking this understanding, and my fountain for that understanding was through you. So as I saw you, you were the pureness in my life. You were the God voice in my life. You were the guidance in my life, because I was seeking that knowledge that you so freely just kind of dropped into my lap. And so in doing that, I wanted to maintain your pureness of self. I didn't want anybody to mess that up. I didn't want anybody to change your mind, because I thought that your mind was more smart than everybody's mind, mine included. So I often brought a lot of information to you about the world, about politics, about teachers and students and parents and children, and I often asked your advice about what do you need as a mom? What do you think a mom should be? Do you remember those questions? And that was because what I was doing.
That really, I think, informed a lot of how I see the world today. So you and I nurtured nurtured in me an inquisitiveness and a curiousness about the world. And not only, I know a lot of parents are, well, I'm the parent and that's what I said, so that's what we'll do. And you would always come to me and say, well, I'm supposed to be the parent, but I never did this before. What do you think we should do? So our life together has always felt very collaborative. And I wonder if that's a result of your upbringing, of being on your own quite young, or if that's a result of your spiritualness and your different perspective, or maybe it's both. And that's what led you to parent me the way that you did, in that it was less of, I wouldn't even call it parenting. I think it was like we kind of held hands and walked through life together and learned things together from dual perspective. You as the person who's supposed to be in control, and me as the person who's not supposed to be in control, and we would trade those things back and forth frequently.
That's awesome, Britt. That's really a great way to explain it, and I agree with you 100%. And one of the things I know that, well, in my upbringing, just to give people a little bit of a background, is my family asked me to leave the home when I was fairly young, beginning when I was 7 years old and continuing on through my life until the last time when I was just turning 16. So I really didn't know if I didn't think I was a good kid. I didn't think I was a good teenager, and I certainly didn't think I was going to be able to be a good mom. So I did include you in all of those decisions after that moment when you were 3 years old. And what I saw the world do to you is what I kept trying to kind of thwart off of you. So I always tried to give you a different perspective because I wanted your perspective of the world to be maintained as that perspective that you shared with me when you were 3 years old. So when your dad didn't step up and be a dad, and when he didn't show up on your birthday, and when he, when your teacher didn't like you, or when you didn't get picked for something, that I always had to do for you what you did for me. I had to give you a different perspective. I had to have you go deeper inside because I couldn't let you lose that fountain. Now, when I think about that, I think, did I do that for you or did I do that for me? I was seeking this pureness that you had, and my goal was to make sure that nobody took away that pureness from you.
Right. And
see, because that's where I retrieved all of that from.
Right. And from like the child perspective, this is probably one of the ways that is across the board the typical child of any parent experience, is that the lessons that we learn and the lessons that our parents try to instill on us at first can seem really confusing, and they can seem really frustrating, and we don't get why they're telling us these things, and we don't get it, and we don't get why they're asking us these questions. But then we get older and we realize, oh, I see why they did that now, or oh, that makes so much sense, or oh my gosh, I'm so glad my mom told me that thing about that thing, and not to get mad about the guy, because it's not about the guy, it's actually about this other thing, and it's about this other thing and not that thing. So it's one of those, I think, if you back it all the way up and zoom out, you can see that a lot of experiences that you and I have had from a spiritual perspective mirror just regular old mom and daughter stuff. And it's the same tropes of like the stuff that you tried to teach me was confusing and it was frustrating. And I didn't know why you didn't know what you were. The thing that bothered me was that you would ask me these questions and I didn't know the answers to them, but you were asking me because you didn't know. And I was like, well, how am I supposed to know if you don't know? And we would have to figure it out together. And that would confuse me. But now that I'm older, I see that the point of that was because you really did. You were trying to guide me towards that internal place. You were trying to guide me towards that pure connection that I had, and that was just getting crowded by all of this human crap that we pick up. And that your questions and your poking, just like any other parent's questions and poking about, like, well, did you get your homework done? Did you do this? Did you take out the garbage? How about looking for a job? All of those things guide you to your destiny. They guide you to your future. They guide you to being an aware adult in the world. And it's the same with all these spiritual teachings. It worked the exact same way. So the same way that you instilled in me the value of $1 is the same way that you instilled in me the value of truth and the value of finding my own truth for my own self, not because this is what the world said, right? Like, you can't wear eyeliner because the whole world says you wear eyeliner. Also, do you really like black eyeliner on the bottom lid, or do you like the way you look in blue eyeliner? Because you still can't wear eyeliner, but when you want to wear eyeliner, what color is your color? So to kind of put that into a human perspective, those were the kind of lessons that were being taught. It wasn't just yes or no on this human thing. It was sure, but why? It was okay, but then what? It was yes, and how? And that's what I think is the difference between just those regular human teachings and then the human teachings with a spiritual twist, in that not only did you parent, but you parented me and taught me how to continue to raise myself.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I realized about both you and Marissa, my other daughter, her name is Marissa, and she's 20. She'll be 21 tomorrow. Happy birthday to Marissa.
Happy birthday,
Mommy. But one of the things that I tried to do after that moment when you were 3 is recognize that you knew better about some things than I did. And so I would always seek that opinion in you, which eventually ended up making you accountable to yourself. So, my friends and my family, when we were still part of the family, they kind of criticized the way I was as a mom and criticized that I didn't have too many rules and I didn't pull the mom card enough and, that children should be, quiet and they shouldn't have an opinion or a voice. But I always gave that to you. And in doing that, you ended up actually becoming accountable for your own decisions. So I never really placed on you. I always wanted to know if you want to go sleep overnight at your friend's house and all your other friends are going, that's great. You can go. I don't mind. And if you come home and you say, I want to go sleep over at Renee's house because everybody's going over. I'm like, yeah, okay, great. Everybody's going over. But do you really want to go over? Or are you just going over because everybody else is going over? Because I wanted to teach you that you don't have to go along with the group. You don't have to become part of a group mentality. You get to choose. And it's okay, because if you choose that you really don't want to go, are you afraid to not go? Because you might lose your friends if you don't go. Are you afraid of that? I don't want you to be afraid of that, because I don't want you to make a decision to go to Renee's sleepover because everybody else is going when you really don't like sleepovers. You just really are the kid that likes to stay home. So you see, when you're making your decisions in your life, it's very easy for me as a parent to say, I'm the mom, and I said so because I'm the mom. You have to do it. But what if I was kind of in fear of, I didn't want to mess it up. So I wanted to get your opinion too, because sometimes we tell our kids to do something and then later we're like, dude, I wish I would have never told them to do that. And so helping you to recognize those things of yourself made you accountable for yourself, which made you make decisions that were really, really good. And that part, I think, was difficult for you because all of your other friends were able to break the rules. But the only rules that you had and that Marissa had were the rules that we specifically set up. Do you remember the time when Marissa was little and she went over to Mary's house and I said, don't walk around the block, only stay in front of Mary's house, don't go in the yard, don't go in the house. And she ended up walking around the block with Mary, and I found out. And I asked her about it, and she started to cry. And I said, why are you crying? And she said, because I'm going to be in trouble and you're going to yell at me. And I said, because you lied. She's like, yeah. I said, Marissa, do you know what a lie is? She said, yeah. It's when I don't tell you the truth. I said, do you know what a lie does? And it was Marissa's first lie that she ever told, ever, that she was in Mary's house when she wasn't. She walked around the block. So I explained to Marissa, this is what a lie is. This is what a lie does. This is what truth is. And when you and I have truth, we have a good relationship, because now I'm going to be worried that I can't trust you. So a lie breaks trust. Do you understand? She's like, yes. I said, okay. I'm not going to punish you because you don't know what a lie is. So here's what a lie is. Here's what a lie does. What do you think that your punishment should be if you lie again? Because what I wanted to do was try to accomplish what you had experienced in your journey, in our way, mine and your way of how we are as mom and daughter. You learned stuff that was brilliant, and your capacity to think about the world in so many different perspectives is amazing. So when Marissa came 8 years later, I wanted her also to have that pureness. So Marissa got it at the very beginning. She got it right when she was born, that attention to her soul, not the attention to, can she walk? Can she talk? Is she going to behave well at the store? It was more about what's that pureness in you. That's what I got to nurture, because when Brittany was 3, oh, my God. So when I realized that at 8 years old, you were accountable for your own self, I wanted Marissa to have that same ability. And so I explained to her what is a lie, and I thought, well, I can make her accountable to herself. I'll just ask her what her punishment should be. So she says, well, I think I should be grounded for 1 week and no TV and no outside and no tree. And I was like, no, because, we're going to have to be the parent. My job as a parent is to make you accountable to yourself. And my job isn't to tell you what to do. And it's not to make you who I want you to be, because you're never going to be who I want you to be, because that's not who you're supposed to be. So if I try to make you who I want you to be, that is going to ruin our relationship. It is going to create anxiety and disconnection between us as mother and daughter. So a lot of times that's where parents get messed up. We think that our children are a reflection of us, and in some sense they are, but they're a reflection of your soul connection, not of whether or not they become a doctor or they dig a ditch. It doesn't matter. So when Marissa said that, I said, no, I think that what we should actually do is probably, how about 1 day, no going outside? Just 1 day of grounding if you ever lie again. And she said, okay, because I want her to understand the consequence. And so about a month later, Marissa lied again. And when she lied again and I busted her, she started to cry. So I picked her up and I put her in my arms and I said, I'm so sorry, baby. And she said, why, Mom? I'm in trouble now. And I said, well, you're grounded for a day. And she got more upset and started to cry more. And I hugged her more and I said, yeah, that really sucks. I'm so sorry that that's your rule, that's your rules for yourself. I said, and my job as your mommy is to make sure that you live up to and you listen to and obey the rules that you made for yourself. I'm like, aren't you glad that you didn't make the rule to not go outside the whole week? And she was like, yeah. We actually had a very fun day that day, and Marissa really never lied again. I can't think of a lie that I can bust her in at this current time. She's the kid that always honors her own truth, and I really think it came from that day. I could be wrong. She's listening to us in the basement, but that is something that I think really initiated her seeking her pureness. And so me as a parent helping you seek your pureness came through an example where you showed me the pureness which helped my life. In Marissa's instance, seeking her pureness was about honoring her own truth. Not looking at the truth of another.
Right.
So now I know, just in the difference of both of you, how to raise each of you. You see?
Yeah. And
but
I think
you rebelled against. Go ahead.
I did. I think the important thing to take from that story is that you made the focus less on the punishment and the human punishment and the consequence of what would happen to us if we did that thing. And instead, you turned it and you focused it inward. And you said, how does this make you feel? What are the real consequences that you're looking at? For Marissa, it was, what's the real consequence? Well, it breaks trust and you don't feel so good and I worry. Those are the real consequences. The consequence isn't you don't get to go outside for a day or you're in for a week, no TV. The consequence is truth. The consequence is what's happening inside of you. And that is very unique in your parenting style with both of us, that everything that you taught us was very much focus inward. Look inward. What's going on inside of you? What's going on? What does this mean for you inside? What you're doing outside, what people are saying outside, what's happening over here, what is that doing inside of you? Because you took yourself out of the situation. You took yourself out of the equation. You said, yes, I'm your mother, but that's besides the point, which is crazy if you think about it. Yes, I'm your mother, but that's besides the point. Instead of it being, I'm the authority figure, I'm doing this thing, you have to listen to me, it's, I'm your mom, and I'm helping you to understand what you have done to you and what you will do to you, and how can you pick you. And so it was really interesting growing up and seeing the differences in how you conveyed that message, because it was the same message that you conveyed to me and that you conveyed to my sister. We had the same core of our upbringing, but the way you handled it with each of us was very different. Now, because you said Marissa came from day one with that you instilled that in her, that was very much her focus from day one. I think what happened with me is that my challenges on Earth and in this iteration are a little different than hers. She's very spiritual focused. She's very connected with her soul, and they are partners in this life.
Britt,
and
you totally heard my brain, because I was just going to ask you, how does yours differ from Marissa's? So go ahead, keep going. That's great.
Okay. And I think it's interesting because hers is very higher minded. And Madi and I, we joke a lot that she's very of the heavens, and I'm very of the earth. So she's up in the clouds with Jesus and hanging out in the sky, and that's where her focus is, and that's where she spends 80% of her time. And I'm in the dirt playing with the grass. That's where I am. So a lot of my lessons are very earth-focused, and a lot of my struggles, even though I have this awareness and I have been encouraged to find and follow the purity of oneness and the purity of truth in my life, I'm yeah, I hear you, but I want to go make this massive mistake first, just so I can confirm what it is that you told me and what I told myself. So I think, I don't know, maybe I'm your crash test dummy kid, Mom. Maybe I'm the one.
No, you know what's so funny? You signed up for that, because I have a memory of when you were about, 7 months old. We had gone to see Nana right before she passed away. We were in Chicago, and I went to put you on a blanket on the grass, and your foot touched the grass, and you had a meltdown. So when you said, I'm here on the earth, I'm the dirt, I'm in the dirt, I have to go experience earth and then come to a revelation of myself, where Marissa begins in the revelation and has to bring it to earth. So it's really funny that you said that, because that is a very accurate assessment of both of you, my earth baby and my heaven baby. It's you both adapt, you both get the same lessons, but one through a very physical type of journey, the struggle of life. You began that with me as a baby, just me and you. So you and I went through the dirt together, and then we figured it out, and then Marissa came along, and we got to begin that with her. See? Cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's talk about something that plagues every parent, and this is the thing that I get questions about all the time, is what was it like to be a teenager with a mom who can read your brain? And this is the question I get the most, because for people who have never had a session with my mom before, who have never attended a gallery with my mom before, she's the type of spiritual reader who, when she's fully connected with you and you're in a session together, she can almost pick the thoughts out of the air before they hit your brain. And she's been able to do this my whole life. And it is, after session, people will come up to me and they'll be like, does she do that to you? And I'll be like, yes, all the time. And they'll say, really? What was it like to be a teenager with a mom who knew everything you were up to? And I'll tell you, it was hell, because I could get away with nothing. There was one time where I was going to sneak out.
I told my friends, limited you from anything, because I made you accountable to yourself. So I never said no.
I know, and that's the best part of the story. So don't give it away, Mom. So I told my friends were like, we're going to go out, nothing nefarious. We were going to go to the Steak and Shake at midnight and have shakes and then go home, right? So we weren't up to any craziness, but they're like, we're going to sneak out and we're going to come pick you up and we're going to pull in the street behind your house. So sneak out the window or something. And I said, yes, I will be there. I'm going to sneak out. I just have to wait for my mom to go to bed. So I'm getting ready, and I don't know if I was being suspicious. When you tell this part of your story, Mom, you can weigh in if I was acting like I was.
I wasn't. I was just doing the dishes.
So,
I was getting ready to go to bed.
No, I know. And so I thought, okay, as soon as she goes up, I'm going to go. And I very clearly knew that my plan, at the time, my bedroom was ground level, so I could pop the screen out and I could just walk out into the backyard. So my plan was I'm just going to pop the screen and I'm going to go. So I'm waiting for my mom to go up to bed, and then she starts making her way, and we kiss goodnight. And then right before she gets upstairs, she turns and she goes, oh, honey, when you sneak out later, make sure you take your key and just go out the front door. I don't want your bedroom window to be open all night long, letting bugs in and stuff. And then text me when you get to where you're going. Where are you going? You're going to like a restaurant? Well, text me later. Love you. Have fun. And I was pissed because there goes my rebellion. There goes my big plan. And now I just have to tell my friends to pick me up in my driveway because my mother knows I'm sneaking out. Like, that's not sneaking out. That's not rebellion. That's just me going out at a late hour. So when I came home later and I talked to her the next day, I asked her, how did you know that I was going? How did you know that I was going to sneak out? So, Mom, how did you know? What did you see? What was it like from your perspective as a spiritual person? What clues were you given that I was planning my unnecessary escape?
So I was up here getting the things ready for tomorrow at work, and I was getting tired. I was getting ready to go to bed. And I'm in the middle of brushing my teeth, and I'm thinking about, like, do I have my computer? Did I check that application? So I'm thinking about my day that day at work and what my day at work would be like the next day. That's what my thought process was. But oftentimes when our soul talks to another soul, when my soul talks to your soul here on earth, or if my soul talks to my mom or my grandma in heaven, you have a chakra system that your soul uses to communicate information to you. And so when I was in the middle of my human thought process about my day, this random memory popped into my head about when I was 15. I was in a basement apartment bedroom, ground level, and I snuck out to go downtown with my boyfriend, and I popped the screen out. And I left a note from my parents that said I went on a run in case they woke up in the morning and they would see a note if I didn't make it home in time, or if it was too light outside to come in through the window. So this memory of my past jumped into my head. And I know that's because your soul probably spoke to my soul about your plan because, you know, you're my daughter, or some family member or my own soul went and got that information and brought it back. However it came to my soul told me about it. So as I got that, I was like, I'm going to sneak out. And I was like, yeah, and then I was like, then I'm going to have to fix the dang screen, and it's going to be a mess, and why doesn't she just go out the front door? So that's why I told you that, is because the communication that came to me was some memory I hadn't thought about in over 20 years. Right. And for me not to think of that memory in 20 years, and it came to my mind at that point after my awakening, because the awakening was 28. When you snuck out, this is about 6 or 7 years later. So you were like 15, 16 years old. So by that time, I had understood that the communication that when your soul talks to you, it talks to you like that. And that's how I knew, just like the day that you dyed your hair purple.
Right. And I went over to my friend's house, and they were dyeing their hair, and their mom was, very like, do whatever you want. They had crazy color hair anyway. And she's like, should we do yours? And I was like, I don't know. I don't think my mom would let me. And they're like, well, how about let's just do a little bit underneath so she won't find out. And I said, okay. And I went and I did it, and I got my little hair dyed, and then I came in the front door. And the way our house was set up at the time, the front door, my mom always sits at the kitchen table, and you can't see the front door from the kitchen table. You kind of have to go around this like partition wall. And so she couldn't see me when I came in. But I came in and I closed the door and I said, "Hey, Mom." And she goes, "What color did you do?" And I said, "What?" And she goes, "What color did you dye your hair?" Number one, she didn't know that we were dyeing hair. She didn't know that I was even over at this particular friend's house. She thought I was at a different somebody's house. Because if she had known, maybe she would have put two and two together, that these girls have crazy hair, so Brittany's going to come home with crazy hair. But she didn't know any of this. And I walk in, and she says, "What color did you do?" And so there goes my rebellion again. I can't rebel at all because my mom was always 5 steps ahead of me all the time.
And the thing is that rebellion really comes from a human thing. There shouldn't be a rebellion inside of you about anything. And so your need to
not
kind
when
of
you're
rebel,
in total alignment.
Right. Not when
because
you're in
if you are
alignment.
in alignment, when you're in alignment, you don't need to rebel. So like Marissa, for example, she doesn't need to rebel because her truth rings so loud within her. And she's always living from that place of alignment. So there was no need for her to ever lie again after she lied that one time. There was no need for her to rebel. There was no need because she knew that the governing authority in her life was her and her higher truth. Whereas me, I still like to push up against those boundaries. And a little bit of rebellion is okay. I'm not in any bad kind of straits. But the rebellion comes from, I think, as the kid in this situation, I think the rebellion comes from when you first understand that you have that dual perspective inside of you, that you can hear the truth, but you also have your ear too hard to the ground of humanity. You are also listening very hard to the things around you, and it competes with the things inside of you. And that, I think, is what the tension between those two things and wanting to have them both or ignore them both or ignore one in favor of the other, I think that's where rebellion comes from. Whereas, like, Mom, you've always taught me that honoring yourself honors everyone around you. So when Marissa honors herself, she honors everyone around her, right? So if she doesn't really want to go to that sleepover, she doesn't. And that's actually better because the friend who was having the sleepover kind of didn't want to have the sleepover, so she ended up canceling it because Marissa didn't go. So it makes things better. And I think when you don't honor yourself at any point, that's when you experience what humanly we've assigned the term rebellion.
And I agree. And I think that also what you're kind of leaning toward is we have this nature of ourself that's developed in the world. And that comes from like our state of being experience or early childhood conditioning, because we experience all emotions one time in our life. So we learn a set of emotions as children. And like I may learn about abandonment, or I may learn about fear, or I may learn about communication or truth. There's something or validation, but I'm going to learn a set of emotions as a child. And when we learn those emotions, if we think about it, the body ages. It ages. So chronologically, our body is going to grow, it's going to change, and it is going to age. Likewise, our mental state or our mind is going to age. It's going to gather new perspectives. It's going to grow. So both of those parts of our Trinity, we're mind, body, and soul, analytical, physical, emotional, God self, Jesus self, healing self, id, ego, super ego, we're three. So the way that our bodies grow and the way that our minds grow, they are the two parts of us that go into conflict with the emotional self. So when we recognize that split, that in the humanity part, that's because there's a part of us that never grows. There's a part of us that doesn't, jump on the bandwagon and keep growing up. We learn about an emotion, and then our goal is to master that emotion. And until we master that emotion, that's our internal battle with ourselves. So when Marissa learned about a lie, she learned about it once. Now she can try to avoid what it does to her and pay those consequences of being grounded, But what is it going to gain? It's not going to gain anything. And so when she grows up, because she learned about lies as a 3-year-old, her emotion about lying is a 3-year-old. And so every time that lies come into perspective, her emotions are still 3. But her age and her mind is 40, because I think she's older than her age. But her body is only 21. Yeah. So you never, once you learn about an emotion, you never relearn the emotion. The emotion gets triggered. So if I learn about loneliness when I'm 5, every time loneliness is triggered in my life, my emotional self is going to feel so in conflict with everything because it doesn't match what's in my brain. It doesn't match my age. So when I had you guys kind of go inside, it's because I know that the part that needs to be nurtured is the part that doesn't change.
Right. It's that first time that you experience those things, and that too, the first time that you deviated from the purity, right? So there's that pureness that comes when you're a child, and then you get sad for the first time, or you get angry for the first time, or you feel this particular emotion for the first time, and your goal has always been, as our mother, to bring us back to that place where it happened for the first time, and to recognize it and to understand it, but to get back to the pure that came before. Because that's ultimately what happens to us as we grow up, is that we gain all of these things that can cloud our true perception, that can cloud the thing that we came here with. So your goal has always been, with me it was, oh my goodness, they came with this. And with Marissa it was, oh my goodness, never stop looking from here. Never stop looking from this place, because this is the place, the capital T, capital P place.
And it's interesting, too, because if you think about it, we come here and then we have an experience that, we come here, we think we're part of everything. And then an experience happens and we learn about an emotion, and then we recognize that we're separate from everything. And then we try to get back to what we were right before we knew that we weren't part of everything. And so we spend our life proving to ourselves that we can get back there. And so we have these experiences that consistently trigger that same emotion. We think we have to, be in a tennis match with life. Like, oh, here comes this thing. Let me bat it off of me. Oh, this experience happened. Let me figure out how to fix it. And we're so busy trying to, master the world that we forget that we cannot master the world unless we master the self. And the self is not who you are, what you do, how you react. It's what's happening inside of you. That's the part that's not changing. You've had 1,000 experiences all about lonely. Why isn't lonely changing? But the experience of life did. Your thoughts about lonely have changed based on the experiences that you're living. But something in all of those experiences unchangeable. What is that thing that's unchangeable? Because that's what you have to master. That's where you make the plan. You don't make the plan for the guy that treated you like crap that made you feel this way. You make the plan for the feeling, because that feeling is going to come when the next guy does it, when the best friend does it. Anytime you're brought again to this feeling after the first time, it's like revisiting that moment. And if you were a child, then you never know how to fix it. And then you're 40 and you're wondering, why do I have these bad relationships? How come people always treat me like this? How do I fix it? And that's where you go back to what you kind of brought up before, was about the honor self, and how maintaining that inner truth and really with you, without a fear of your friends hating you, without a fear of your parents yelling at you about the screen. Like, where is that authenticity? Can you be best friends with yourself? And that's really what I understood. And just to caveat where all this began is because I was lost in my world before you. I didn't feel like part of my sisters and brothers. I had been kicked out too many times. my dad, when he decided, you are no longer welcome, Nicole, my sisters, my mother, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, they no longer participated with me either. So when you came into my life, that very much brought me to a place of love. And love that felt so darn unconditional, something that I had never in my life. I had been told about it, but I never really understood how healing unconditional love is. And so when you taught me how to bring that love back into my own self, that's where I wanted you to love yourself as much as you loved me. Because in your eyes as a child, I could do no wrong. You loved me so much, and I loved you so much. Our neighbor used to think that we were faking. Jerry used to tell me, yeah, every time you come home, you two run up to each other. That's ridiculous. I'm like, no, I'm actually really joyful to see her. Like, I really love that. And your existence brought that unconditional love. So if you and I were outside of unconditional love with one another, if we didn't feel that way with one another, something was off. How many times have you and I had a white elephant in the room that we have to yell at each other to get out of all of that dirt stuff that you were talking about, to get out of all of that human cloudiness and situation, and we have to get through the situation before we can hit that truth.
Right. Yeah, that's a regular theme, I think, for us, is that everything is great, and then all of a sudden we're like, what happened here? And then we have to go digging and find out what happened and how do we get back to that place. And it's interesting because when you're in relationships with people, it's kind of the thing that you want to do with people is the same thing that you want to do with yourself. So you can tell when something feels off with another person. Can you tell when it feels off with you? And that's the goal. The pureness that you've always taught us to approach our life with is the same pureness that you teach us to live in the world with and to share with others. And that not only in ourselves should we be striving for that place of purity and that place of truth, but we should always put that first in every relationship that we have, because that's how we know that we will always stay with ourselves. And when you stay with yourself, you stay with everybody else.
Wow.
I know we only have a couple minutes left here, so any final remarks, Mom?
Honey, I love you so much, first of all, and thank you for today, because there's been, I always wanted you to understand that I know that I had the awakening experience when I was holding Marissa, but, honey, it began with you.
Oh, Mom. Don't make me cry on the radio.
I know, but it's true, and I think that in our conversation today, I was able to express that in a way that I don't think I've been able to express that to you in that manner. And I'm really glad that we did this today, because I'm glad that I was able to have those words to show you where I began to awaken. I had to go through the dirt a little bit, but you were the one that held my hand.
Oh, thanks, Mom. I love you.
I love you too.
And we love you.
And we love you. And thank you.
We love you too. Thank you so much for having us. It's been a real pleasure.
This was a brilliant idea as a conscious mom. It's funny too, Niki, also formerly Nicole, I assume. You had 2 daughters as a single mom?
I do. I have 2 daughters. I have Brittany, who's 29. We've been talking with her, and Marissa, who's 21 tomorrow.
So 8 years apart.
Yes.
The same ages roughly as my 2 girls. Weird.
Oh, wow,
so
look at that.
You probably found some similar. Yeah, her name's Nicole. My name's Nicole. You had a Macy. I had a Macy.
And no family. Once you started raising your kids, you're totally on your own. And I mean, it's just super spooky listening to this today. But also just as a conscious parent who is listening to such a brilliant articulation between mom and daughter post-rearing phase. I mean, I was just a cheerleader with pom-poms over here. It was brilliant. And I hope you consider doing part 2, because this was lovely. More stories. It was.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll do that. I tried to include my other daughter today, but today she decided to listen. Marissa makes her decision, so hopefully one day she'll join us. She's had quite a journey herself of healing. Marissa was diagnosed with a desmoid tumor when she was a little girl and recently had to decide to amputate her leg, and she did. And Brittany and I and Marissa and her dad have been through quite a spiritual journey that maybe, I think, in the course for parents with children and how to guide them and how to take guidance from the child that is sick. My daughter, Marissa, is brilliant on that, and that really involves her inner truth that she had to rectify. And Brittany's earth truth that brought her to her soul was the most supportive, enlightening experience between two sisters. So I think that maybe we'll try to do that sometime soon.
That would be amazing. Absolutely amazing. We've got, wow, that just went so fast. Yes, please do it again. Yay. We've got 60 seconds to the top, and just any kind of shameless self-promotion you want to get in there before the end of the hour, that'd be awesome.
Go ahead, Brittany, because you told me what I was supposed to do, but I forgot. So go ahead.
Okay. Shameless self-promotion for my mom. This hour you've been listening to Niki Shikuteka and the Almapura Awakening Hour of Enlightenment. Thank you all for tuning in. For more information about Niki and the services she offers, her mediumship, her mentorship, her tarot cards, and her connections with loved ones from beyond, please visit her website at www.almapura.com. There you will also find links to any upcoming events and how to get in touch with her yourself. Thank you so much all for listening and tuning in, and we look forward to speaking with you soon.
Wow.
Great job, Britt.
Oh my God. You guys are just wonderful. Thank you so much. This was inspiring to so many parents out there and parents to be. Thanks, guys, and we'll talk to you next time, Niki.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Oh, it was amazing. Speaking of amazing, Tyrona Hope next on News for the Soul.
You're listening to News for the Soul Radio, life-changing talk radio from the uplifting to the unexplained since January 1997.